Blessings, good evening. A few questions have come in today. First is, Luang Por, I always give up my meditation when my mind is not peaceful and thinking a lot. What can I do? Don't give up. This is why the Buddha said the quality of kanti barami, patience, endurance, is the supreme destroyer of mental defilement. Mental defilement here, when we're meditating, probably manifests. The best way to contemplate it is the 5 hindrances, the different kinds of hindrances, obstacles that arise when you meditate. So they're divided into 5. First is sensual desire. Second is ill will. Third is sloth and torpor, drowsiness, dullness. The fourth is restlessness and agitation. And that includes worry, anxiety. And the last is skeptical doubt. So when you're practicing meditation, whether it's just for a few minutes or for hours, doesn't matter. These hindrances are what you're encountering in close proximity. Of course, they're going on all the time in your life anyway. They're always there, in the back of your mind or in the front of your mind, in your experience. And they'll stop you concentrating on a job of work, or you're talking to your friend and the hindrances still come up. But where you study them closely is when you meditate, because you're trying to establish mindfulness. It's probably your number one priority, to be aware and to fully comprehend, understand what you're doing. And these hindrances hinder that, they obstruct that, they distract you, they fill your mind with other things that confuse you, weaken you, and so on. So when we say thinking a lot, it'll be one or other of those hindrances. Even though you could say, well, drowsiness isn't strictly speaking thinking, but actually when you're drowsy, the mind is turning to the dullness, the drowsiness as an object. In the same way it might turn to think of something that is agitating or worrisome. It's just the object is different. So thinking a lot, you could be thinking a lot about sense objects, things you like, things you want, why you want them, how to get them, how to enjoy them, thinking about the enjoyment, the pleasure that will come when you get them, and so on. Or it could be thinking a lot based in ill will, irritation, aversion. Could be the drowsiness again, it could be restlessness and anxiety. So generally that's sort of either restless, agitated about stuff that's gone on in the past that's now popping up in your mind as memories and concerns about things you've said and done. So particularly when you haven't, maybe you've broken a precept in one way or another, or you've had a strong emotional event. Or sometimes it's restlessness and agitation over things you feel you should have done but you didn't do in the past. Or else restlessness, agitation, anxiety about what's to come, the future. Thinking about things that may come up, even though they may never come up, but just the worry about them, looking on the dark side of things, predictions, seeing the bad, seeing bad possibilities for the future, and so on. This agitates the mind, makes the mind very restless. So this restlessness and agitation is also a huge part of what we call thinking a lot. So, reminding yourself to be patient with your own mind is a good thing to do when you face this situation. You're thinking a lot, your mind is scattered, distracted in one way or another. Remind yourself to be patient with yourself, with your own mind. Where does that come from? Well, it also comes from the quality of metta, goodwill for yourself as a human being, karuna, compassion, because you recognize where you're suffering, even if it's, you might say, quite mild suffering, just thinking a lot, agitated, but it's still a form of suffering. Your mind is not peaceful. So, developing kindness and compassion for yourself helps you to be more patient with the states of mind you're experiencing and gives you maybe some positive energy to deal with them. And patience means maintaining a good attitude, a relatively good state of mind as you encounter difficulty, physical pain, mental pain, agitation. If you're truly patient, it means you're not letting it get to you even though it's a problem. So you have to remind yourself to be patient. Another quality, another sort of supportive quality that will bring up patience is faith, confidence in the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, the way of practice, seeing the value, the importance of the practice, why it's worthwhile, reminding yourself of that so that you get faith, and from faith you get energy, effort. So with the patience and you get, and then effort, then you're willing to work with your mind when it's agitated or whatever it's caught into, thinking a lot in one way or another, or sleepy. The patience, the effort will help you to deal with that, to go through it, to stick with it when you want to give up. And then of course patience and effort are helping you to bring up the quality of mindfulness, where you're really aware, awake, knowing what's going on. And the more mindfulness you have, the less you're feeding this state of agitation, whatever it is, whatever the hindrance is, you're not feeding it so much when you're mindful. So maybe the mindfulness can become established and the hindrance will start to fade out. But until that point, you need the patience and you need the willingness to keep making the effort. One other thing, when you recognize what's going on, you see, maybe you have enough mindfulness to notice that you're agitated, anxious, thinking a lot. Before you give up, see if there's something you can learn from that. Why am I agitated? What's the root cause of this? What's the problem? And just see if there's any wisdom that you can bring into your mind at that time to help deal with that agitation. So Ajahn Chah's famous one is, just tell yourself it's not sure. It's uncertain, it's impermanent. Maybe you can't stop the agitated state of mind, but you wait and watch and it will pass, it will change sooner or later. It's impermanent, so it's not sure, not certain. And many of the things, these hindrances that come up in your mind as you're meditating, you can use this reflection on impermanence to help you deal with them. It's come up, it started, but then it will also cease, it will end. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. That may give you a better attitude towards the hindrance, even though you can't yet get rid of it, let go of it. It's impermanent, so that also helps you to be more patient. Or you may need to bring some other quality into your mind, just reflect or bring up some other quality. If it's a particular hindrance that's come up, agitating you, again, before you stop your meditation, just see if there's something, a different way of looking or dealing with that. So the obvious one might be if you're feeling irritated, angry, and which that really stirs the mind up and makes it difficult to sit, to be mindful, to meditate. You consciously bring up the metta, the goodwill, the kindness, compassion directed to yourself. If it's doubt, which is another one, again, leads us to quickly end a meditation. You're doubting. Can I do it? What's the point? What's the purpose of all this? Where are we going? Doubting the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, teachers, meditation techniques, doubting yourself, your own abilities, etc. Doubt is like that. Well, perhaps one effective way to deal with that is to think of some Dhamma teaching that does bring you confidence, which is going to help allay the doubt or at least push it away or minimize it. So you sometimes thinking of teachers or teachings, remembering Dhamma teachings you've heard before, consciously doing that can help to allay doubt. Or thinking of teachers, the qualities of teachers. If you recognize doubt as doubt and then find something that brings you up, it brings some confidence, that again can help you to let it go. Or again, just using the reflection, it's not sure. Sometimes you have doubt, sometimes you don't. It's not that important maybe. In the end, all this thinking that's bothering you as you start to meditate and may lead you to stop meditating, you want to find some way of getting to see that it's all not that important. The reason we follow our thoughts, every thought seems important. It seems like I've got to think this and I've got to fill my mind with this and sort out this problem, and you feed that, so of course you're going away from the intention to train your mind in mindfulness, to keep being patient with your mind and being mindful and meditating. You're undermining that by giving importance to all this other stuff. So sometimes you have to see, what can I do just to get it in perspective? It's not important. All these thoughts, they come and go. When you stop your meditation and go away, you never think about those things anyway, do you? They've gone and they weren't that important after all. But it's only when you're meditating they come up and it seems they're important. So we delude ourselves, we trick ourselves, so don't believe them. So as you practice more, you'll find different techniques to deal with the mind that is agitated, thinking too much. But basically you're giving less importance to all these thoughts. Another question. Dear Lumpur, why is the Buddha's last teaching on heedfulness linked to the Noble Eightfold Path? Thank you. This word heedfulness comes from the Pali, its translation of the Pali word appamada. So the last teachings of the Buddha was that to the monks, he's saying, monks, all conditions are impermanent. Practice on with heedfulness. There's different ways they translate it, but something like that. Or practice on diligently. Because everything's impermanent. The world is uncertain, your world is uncertain, your health is uncertain, your life situation is changing, the world around you changes, nothing is certain. So keep practicing. But the word heedfulness is the sort of the common translation for the word appamada. And it's quite hard to find a word that really conveys the meaning. In Pali it means an urgency to practice, and that's where the Noble Eightfold Path comes in. That's what you're practicing, that's what you're cultivating, developing. If you're being heedful, following the Buddha, to be heedful means practicing the path. Neglecting that practice, not practicing the path, or practicing the wrong path, going in a different direction, would be considered heedless or careless. So being heedful does bring you to practice the Noble Eightfold Path. It means an urgency to practice, it means being careful, it means diligent, not giving up. Sometimes nowadays people just use mindfulness. It's not really mindfulness, but it can be. A big part of heedfulness is being mindful, because with mindfulness you're kind of ready, your mind is prepared, ready, cautious, attentive, and that leads on to seeing what you need to do in your practice. But you can't use them interchangeably. It doesn't mean just mindfulness. Just as the Noble Eightfold Path isn't simply mindfulness, although that's a huge part of it. All the other factors, the other 7 factors, work in support of mindfulness. So, what did the Buddha say? Is that this quality apamada, or heedfulness, is like the elephant's footprint. All other Dhamma practices, Dhamma teachings fit into heedfulness, just as all the footprints of the different animals in the forest fit into the footprint of the elephant, because it's so big. So apamada, heedfulness, is big. It's a big Dhamma. It's a word that encapsulates everything, and that's why you can fit the Noble Eightfold Path in there, and all these other kind of definitions and aspects fit within it. So it's a really useful word. It's quite hard to translate it into English. Heedfulness still often doesn't really convey the full meaning, especially to people new to Buddhism. What does heedful mean? So you have to think about it. It's really, are you applying the Buddhist path, the Noble Eightfold Path, cultivating that? Are you on it or not? So if you're doing things that increase suffering, increase the presence of greed, anger, delusion, craving and attachment in your mind that leads to suffering, we would say you're being heedless. If you're doing things that reduce greed, anger and delusion, reduce craving and attachment, reduce your suffering, well, you're probably being heedful. It's another way of looking at it. You're looking at the results of your actions and the direction your mind, your life is going. The simplest way, what is the Noble Eightfold Path, is sometimes they translate that as just the mind looking or knowing itself. When you have mindfulness, but also wisdom, the reflective power of the mind is working, and the mind is looking back at itself. That is the Noble Eightfold Path in essence. Even though we expand it out into the other 8 factors. So that would be like being heedful when the mind is aware of itself. Then you can free the mind from attachment, delusion, and so on. It's another reflection. Next question. Ajahn, is there any difference between metta and karuna? Well, these are what we call Brahmavihara Dhammas. There's 4 of them, which we hear about quite a lot. It's always good to remind ourselves. Metta means loving kindness, loving friendliness, goodwill. Karuna means the desire, the wish to alleviate suffering. So both metta and karuna you can practice for yourself, for others, for individuals, or for groups of people, or for all beings. I usually say the 4 Brahmaviharas. The other 2 I didn't mention. Mudita, sympathetic joy, or empathetic joy, altruistic joy, joy at the happiness and success of others. And the last one is upekkha, equanimity. I tend to say, well, they come out of the practice of metta. You start with goodwill, which is a very kind of a quality I think you need to develop regularly, every day in your practice. And because we tend so much towards irritation, negativity, aversion, even hatred, which are only leading to suffering, then consciously cultivating metta is a very standard and central practice to Buddhism. It's not the only practice, but it's central. Karuna comes out of it though, because if you're developing goodwill for yourself, for others, then you'll start noticing if you're having this genuine wish for others to be well, happy, successful, enlightened, and then somebody is having some suffering, which is obviously not being well, being happy, being enlightened, then metta leads on to karuna, the wish, well, may they be free from this suffering and become enlightened, or may I be free from this suffering and become enlightened. So karuna comes out of metta, and then mudita, this rejoicing in the happiness, the success of others. Well, it's another subtle part of metta, in the sense that, as you practice goodwill for others, you notice, well, some people are in good states and successful. Maybe they're happier than you, or more successful than you, or they're enlightened and you're not. You can still have mudita for them. And it's just that rejoicing. One more person is enlightened in the world. Good. The overall level of suffering in the world has dropped when one person becomes enlightened. Or maybe they haven't become enlightened, but they're just peaceful, successful in what they're doing at this time. They're well, happy in some way, and sharing in that and wishing it to continue for them, seeing the good in it. Upekkha, though, is the hard one, and so it's the most mature, the one that comes at the end of the list because it's the hardest to develop, and that comes out of the understanding that we're all owners of our karma, good and bad, and receiving the fruits of our karma, good and bad. So even though you have goodwill for another person, or an animal, or any being, they may have suffering, they may have success, but they may have suffering. That's a result of their karma. Each individual is the owner of their karma. And particularly with karuna, you may have the thought, I want to help them, free them from their suffering, or I want to be free myself. But upekkha comes in. It's partly wisdom, partly this balance of mind where you say, well, I wish them to be free from suffering, or I wish to be free from suffering myself, but maybe it can't happen yet. Maybe the conditions, the causes and conditions are not right yet. It may take time, there may be things that need to be done. So even though I have a good wish of goodwill, kindness, compassion, I also have to have equanimity to accept the fact that maybe I or someone else are still suffering. We're not there yet. You need that also to balance the other 3 Brahmaviharas. So you practice equanimity, understanding the karma at work, good and bad, giving their results, to stop your mind becoming caught into suffering again as you practice these Brahmaviharas, because you can practice goodwill. And obviously, have a lot of goodwill for someone. Someone might not respond very well. They may be, they won't reciprocate it. They're angry with you, or they are indifferent to you. So you have to also reflect on karma with equanimity. I've made good karma. Perhaps you could say I make good karma practicing goodwill, but doesn't necessarily mean other people would recognize that or reciprocate or respond to it. You have to accept that with equanimity. Or another danger, say with metta, is you can go too far, become too attached to the object of your metta. It could be self-love or love for others, to the point where you become, you fall in love with someone, or just become very attaching, controlling, desiring of that person to be a certain way. You start off with goodwill, kindness, but then you become very attached. And again, can have suffering. You can suffer yourself, they can suffer. The obvious one is maybe you just fall in love with someone, trying to help them, and go too far. Or just become too controlling and then get disappointed if the outcome is not the way you want. So you need the upekkha, the equanimity, to balance it. Or with karuna, you need upekkha, because the tendency is if you're too attached with karuna, you become sad because you're seeing yours or someone else's suffering, and it just makes you sad, and sadness can kind of paralyze you. Actually stops you functioning, stops you thinking properly and choosing the right path. It can do that when it's, you might say, too much karuna, but without wisdom and without upekkha supporting it. Makes us sad, unhappy, frustrated, depressed, burnt out is a common word we use, isn't it? When people want to help others, but they just do it to the point where they've got nothing left to give, become burnt out. Mudita has a certain weakness to it, is that you're enjoying the happiness of someone else, their success. You're genuinely happy for them or with them, but you can take it too far, this happiness, and just indulge in that happiness to the point where it becomes another kind of attachment. Always happy, always seeing the happiness in life, and not being fully aware of there is also suffering, there's also problems in the world. We can become frivolous, trivial, or just caught up in mudita to the point where we lose our way, lose awareness of our responsibility, whatever. So again, we need upekkha. Upekkha itself has its dangers. There's probably the obvious one, you just become cold and indifferent. You say, oh, it's all karma. It's their karma. They're suffering, that's their problem, their karma. Can make us cold, or our karma. Sometimes in upekkha just makes us very kind of cold, don't care, negligent, can't be bothered towards ourselves, towards others. So then we might need to go back and develop more metta and karuna. So there's a certain interlinking of these four qualities. They're all meditation objects. And so, you can develop each one of them individually as a meditation. And as you do that, it's not simply an explanation like I'm giving you. There's a feeling there that comes with it. And often it's that feeling, the peaceful mind of metta or of karuna, that becomes the most important thing in the meditation. So it's something you feel, and maybe people in contact with you or the objects of your metta or your karuna become aware of it, especially if you're talking or being with them. There's a feeling that comes with it. So it's not just a dry intellectual exercise. It's just a natural feeling of goodwill, supportive, compassionate in the case of someone suffering. And that feeling comes out maybe just in your meditation, but then also maybe in your speech, your actions. And you notice people who practice these metta, karuna a lot, then they're just naturally looking or aware of people's suffering and goodwill, and they express that in the things they say, the things they do. So it becomes a very active part of their character as well as a meditation which is maybe going on more internally. but it's balanced. It's not just the intention, the thought, there's also a strong feeling. And if you ever meet someone who's developed metta or karuna to the point of, you'd say, jhana or samadhi, then often you can feel it. It's pleasant. You can even get, someone else can get attached to that pleasant feeling as well. So that's another contemplation in itself. So every aspect of the practice needs some wisdom and reflection to go with it, to protect you from attaching, getting lost in something, and so on. But I would say metta and karuna are like brother and sister. They're very close. Come out or depend on one another in actual practical reality, in practice. They come out, one comes out of the other. Last question. Ajahn, how should we practice when we hear the news about monks breaking their rules or not behaving properly? Just carry on your practice. That's their problem, not your problem. Whether it's monks behaving badly or lay people behaving badly, it's going on all the time in the world, all over the place. Unfortunately, because human beings, unenlightened human beings, follow defilement, greed, anger, delusion, and then you get things happen because of it. So monks even will make mistakes, behave inappropriately, do things wrong, and then people talk about it. So sometimes people will tell you. I mean, if you haven't got first-hand knowledge, you have to just keep an open mind, because sometimes people misinterpret what they've heard or pass on wrong information. That can happen. If you've got first-hand experience, well, that person did something wrong, inappropriate, broke a rule. On the one level, you may be in a position to tell them, or talk to them, remind them where they're going wrong, or maybe talk to someone else, a third party, if there's a teacher or someone in a position to explain to that monk. That might be the appropriate course of action. In your own mind, it's something you reflect on, isn't it? Oh, people make their mistakes, they do these things according to defilement. Rather than getting too caught up into anger towards that person, that may come up, but I would come back to look at yourself. Do I have these tendencies? Do I make similar mistakes, or do I have that same potential within me? So it becomes a cause for a reminder for you to continue your practice, because now you're seeing someone else doing something inappropriate, wrong, a cause of suffering. So you come back to yourself in your own practice. As far as that person goes, well, one thing you can be aware of, well, they're probably making some bad karma there. If a monk doesn't keep the rules, they've ordained to keep the rules, they're making bad karma by not keeping the rules, so they're going to suffer for that. So actually, if you look at it on the deepest level, it might bring up compassion in the sense of this person is going to suffer. You don't have to be angry with them or try and punish them or something yourself maybe, but to realize, this person is going to suffer. And so it's a learning. You're becoming aware of actions and the fruits of action, good and bad, and in this case it's bad. And that's the same with lay people, and then the same with yourself. If I make bad karma, I'm going to suffer for it. Therefore, I'm going to try not to make bad karma. Be more mindful, be more restrained, more careful. So you've got your part of it, your own practice, but there's the learning of what is wholesome behavior, appropriate behavior, what is unwholesome, inappropriate behavior. You maybe learning a bit more about, if you're a lay person, you're learning more about the monk's rules and what is appropriate, what's inappropriate. So it's a learning thing. As I said, there's practical things you can do, like talking to senior monks, other monks, because monks tend to live as a community and interact, and they have ways to deal with monks who break the rules, then there's a way to deal with that. So you can inform someone and then let them get on with that process. Ideally, that's how it will be sorted. Sometimes if it's right in your face, you can tell the monk yourself, just tell them what you think. Oh, this is inappropriate, not right. If you're sure of what you're saying, of what you've seen, what you're doing, you could try that. Or you tell an appropriate third party, a teacher or a senior monk or another monk. So yes, it happens. It happened in the time of the Buddha. It happens today. It's nothing new. It's always sad for the individuals, sad for the religion, but it happens. So we have to try and keep a mindful and wise attitude towards these things. And then also to see, well, this is part of the human condition, this is why we practice. But yes, if someone is not ready to be a monk, then they probably shouldn't be a monk. If they're not ready to keep the rules, then there's other things you can do in life rather than be a monk and then not keep the rules. So those are the questions tonight. We will wish you well and see you next time.